Hi there, welcome to another edition of 411 Pop Culture. This is your host, Justin Steele. Today with me live in Cincinnati is my good friend Alicia. How you doing, Alicia?
I'm great. Hi,
Good.
Justin.
We just got back from watching her daughter Sierra play in the Nutcracker. It was an actually really good performance. Tell me what was the name of the company? This
Ballet Tech of
It
Ohio.
was really good. Cincinnati, Ohio. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Worth the drive out here. But what we're going to talk about today is one of our favorite shows. I'd say it's one of my all-time favorite shows. Would you say it's? Yeah, I know it is yours.
Yes.
The Office, though. The U.S. version. Did you ever really watch the U.K. version?
I never did.
I saw the first episode, which was very similar to the US's first episode. And what brought you to the show? How did you first watch it? Did you stumble across it,
My
or?
ex-boyfriend recommended that we
Okay,
watch
a
it.
past fella from your life.
Hmm.
This one right here is how I started watching the show. She would come down to visit. This was post-college. It came out in 2005, which is right after, it was one of the first shows, besides obviously the original show from the UK, one of the first times to really do the sort of mockumentary style things that happen in film, like you had the Best in Show, Spinal Tap, or This is Spinal Tap, those kind of mockumentary films.
Yeah.
And then even The Comeback. Do you ever see The Comeback with Lisa Kudrow? Oh,
No.
that's one of my favorite all-time shows, and you really should watch it.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
will.
distracted.
Come
You should watch it too. But it actually got canceled because I don't think people knew what to do with it. But then, right as it was ending, it was right as The Office was happening, and The Office took off. And they were kind of like, I think HBO was kind of like, oops, because then they did a second season like 10 years later of The Comeback. But anyway, sorry, I
Feel like
digress.
something like that is going to happen with Good Girls Revolt. Have you
Okay,
seen
I
that?
haven't. Mm-mm.
It's one of those heartbreakingly one season shows like My So-Called Life.
Sure, that's always really hard too
And
when
it
you get
was,
sucked into something
oh
like
my
that and they
gosh.
tragically take it away from you.
Well, the it was the head of the network or some corporate person wouldn't okay it for a second season, I think is what I read.
That's a bummer.
But he's sort of a chauvinist, so it made sense because the show is about feminists.
I really should check it out then. What
Oh
is it
my
called
gosh,
again?
it's
Say the
so
name of it
good.
again.
Good Girls Revolt.
And I think it was probably the second season had already been out, and the third season was about to begin. But Alicia introduced me to the show, and because at the like later on in the seasons they really do those multi or over a season arcs, but back then it was very episodic. But what did draw you in? Was it the comedy? Was it the potential drama? Because by the end of the second season, you really had that sort of will they, won't they relationship. What was it that drew you into it?
I think it was the laughter I was getting. It mirrored what I was experiencing, sort of in office life. But it was much better. I remember our mutual friend Lori saying, I can't believe we work in an office during the day and then go home and watch a show about the office at night. But it's like
That is funny
our
though,
life,
but
but better,
it's nice to have those.
funnier.
It can make you because at least Dunder Mifflin was a very gray environment. I don't know what kind of environment you work in at your office, but it's nice to sometimes have an environment like that. You can then find laughter in your real life,
Yes.
based on what your version of Dwight was doing the night before. But I really enjoy the secondary characters from The Office. I think it's hard to say because I think Meredith might be my favorite, or Kelly Kapoor is definitely one of my favorites. And another thing that did get me into it was you had shown me the second season. And I know a lot of you don't know this, but on the second season disc DVD collection, they have those little NBC The More You Know spots. And I think that really got me into it was like, because it was like, hey girls, try two different shades of lipstick. You're welcome. It was Kelly Kapoor, or Dwight was out there and he's like,
Oh.
and they play the little The More You Know music, but Dwight's like, bears and a wool, or bears and wolves, wolves and bears, white wolves. The more you know. Do 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 do. And so it was really funny. But check out the second season. But who would be your
Oh.
favorite of the secondary characters? I mean, you
Oh.
have the accounting staff, Angela, Oscar.
Ryan and Kelly,
Their
just,
relationship.
oh my gosh. Not just their relationship, but their characters and yeah, how they played off of each other. But then
Well,
they're,
especially as they got older, and they were when they break up, and then she's like, she looks at the camera, or she's like, she tells him that she's pregnant, and he's all like, "Oh God, we gotta schedule this," and then it comes to her little confessional, and she's like, "We have a date." Now, I do think that The Office really was an ensemble show. You had the main cast and the characters, but as the show got on, even the ensemble characters really did have centerpiece moments throughout the series, and I thought that you had some of the best openings to shows ever, like the one episode where Dwight has the fire drill, he's like doing a practice fire drill, and chaos ensues. Everybody is manically running around. Angela throws her cat up in the air, stuff like that. I mean, did you really enjoy it as an ensemble cast?
Yes. I really like the later seasons when James Spader is the regional manager and he has this it wasn't meant to be a party, but he invites everyone from the office over, and they have so many moments like that. Jim and Pam's wedding, and then their baby
Nobody's
shower when
supposed to
nobody's
go,
supposed to be
and
there.
everybody ends up
Well,
being
I
there.
forget how they all end up here, but he's like, it was supposed to be this crazy, wild house, and it looks very dramatic. I remember stone and
Yeah, the indoor
caverns and
pool.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
the
totally like a porn
grotto.
house too, like
Oh
the way you
yeah.
walk through different things, different
Okay,
rooms.
so at the end, they all are just more relaxed versions of themselves. I think Oscar is drinking wine out of the bottle and it's dripping down his chin and
Well, they end up. I know the guys all end up taking off like their clothes, like because Robert
he
California. They end up
starts
doing. It's
it.
kind of like a challenge. Like they think that he is like subconsciously challenging him, and he's not. But they think it is. So everything he does, they end up doing. So at one point, he ends up disrobing and jumping the pool. So they all
Yeah.
start. So yeah, it really is a good ensemble show, and I
Yeah.
think that's hard to find. That makes some of the all-time big shows like Cheers, any workplace comedies, Friends. When you have an ensemble cast that works, it really works. I do think though, I always assumed that it was more improvised than it was, but I do think I've heard that it was very much what's on the page is what they ended up doing.
Hmm.
But you did mention, the later seasons. So are you of the school that, some people think that when Steve Carell left, that the show kind of dipped down a little?
Mm.
I mean, I think I personally was still a big fan. I thought it worked out well.
Okay, so every season after, I think after I first got into it, so season 4, 5, and so on, I kept waiting for it to dive down and for me not to like it anymore. Like Friends, like many other sitcoms went, and I liked it in a different way after Steve Carell left. The show changed,
Sure.
but most of the characters didn't, and they had new energy to work with when new bosses were brought in. Kathy Bates,
Oh, I mean, anything Kathy Bates
and
is
she
in, I'm
just
sold,
brought
but
a
yes.
different energy with her,
She had her
as
big
did,
dogs, didn't she? And
yes.
all that, yeah.
Yeah, don't try to ride them. People try to ride
Right.
them.
Yes. But no, I totally agree that I thought, whereas some shows get canceled and they even do, like we have right now, Roseanne got canceled and it became The Connors. You lost a major character, but it's still kind of the same show. But it is different. I don't think it's any more bad or good compared to what the transition season of Roseanne was into the new series. But The Office, I still think it enhanced. It became a better show in a different way.
Yes.
And I no,
Mm.
I totally agree with that. I really did dig the changing of the different managers. Even when Andy kind of became the manager for a while, and then he takes off and does his thing, and the development between Aaron as the new receptionist,
Mm.
and yeah, I thought as the show went on, I thought it was really good, and I think it worked in a way that you did have in a sort of finale. Steve Carell left in the eighth season, I believe, or at the end of the eighth, around there, and it was kind of like a finale to
Yeah.
him,
Yeah, it was.
and then it kept going.
It was
Yeah,
so beautiful, that ending. Oh,
it really was so beautiful.
I recently rewatched it.
That
Gosh.
was really good.
Well, and it's so beautiful too, those bittersweet moments that are so true to life, where he is proposing to Holly and getting everything he wants, and he can finally leave his family, his workplace.
Yeah.
And, her parents need her in Colorado, so he goes with her to Colorado, and everyone's so excited that they just got engaged in this beautiful candlelight ceremony that they all were a part of, another ensemble
Right.
moment.
I do remember all this. Yeah.
And then the sprinklers come on and she says yes, and then he's like, and we're moving to Colorado, and everybody's like, what? I just cry every time.
Yeah. Hey, while we're on the topic of Michael Scott, what was your favorite Michael Scott relationship? Was it Holly? Not in terms of, I mean, it can be if this is why it is your favorite, in terms of with Holly, he's got his perfect match. But personally for me, my favorite moments of Michael Scott were when he was with Jan. I mean, when he was with
Yes.
like when they had to share that, like everything from the beginning. So they come into their, she's his boss. He's always making inappropriate comments. And then after, episode 2, she would accidentally make some sort of comment or something and come back and be like, oh, I can't say this about Michael Scott of all people. But then as, I remember it was in the second season, he invited Jan and the realtor. I can't think of her name right now, but it's Steve Carell's wife in real life. And he invites the realtor, and they both come to casino night, and Jan is clearly upset. But then, then they end up going to Morocco or somewhere together, and the picture gets spread to everywhere. Jamaica, yeah. It was, she finds out because Packard, or whatever his name is.
Todd
Packard. He ends up, continuing on sending it. And when they get in the apartment together, and she has Hunter, the assistant, and it's also clearly an inappropriate relationship, and they it's a deconstruction of a relationship. You have Jan and Michael, who bring over newly kind of couple Pam and Jim, and also Dwight and his babysitter. And it's like all these different relationships, but they're turning into Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf sort of situation. And he's going on about his 12-inch plasma screen TV. She's going on about her crafts room, but then she's
her
also
candles,
candles, which she's kind of trying to sell to Jim in the background. And but then they end up getting into a huge fight, and she starts lost her mind a little dancing to that song by that Hunter, where it's one night, or it's that one night.
It's about their moments together.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, again, they were clearly in real life terrible for each other, but on the show, that was my favorite relationship. I was sad to see Jan go, but I was happy to see her back with Astrid. That she was going to have with Michael didn't, and then really didn't. And Michael was just, all he wanted was kids. Like that commercial when he was in that kids video.
Yes. I want to have 1 million kids, so nobody can say no to being my friend.
Yes, that was so horribly sad. But so, what are some of your all-time favorite Jim and Dwight pranks? Because I do think a big part of the show were these pranks, and they were funny. There were times where I was I think they wore a little thin occasionally, but overall, they were pretty well done.
Yes. My favorite is when the episodes are a little sad because Jim is in Stanford and he and Pam are not on good terms. I had a hard time with those episodes.
Yeah.
And he sends Dwight faxes from Dwight from the future. And at one point it says, at 8 a.m. today, someone poisons the coffee, and so he knocks it out of, I think, Stanley's hand.
And Stanley's all pissed. Yes. I enjoyed when Dwight somehow thinks it's Friday and it's really Thursday. So Jim gets up, runs over to Pam, and he's like, "We got to keep this going." And he ends up not showing up the next day, and he comes running in. It was really funny. There are a lot of great relationships on the series, and it's the relationships with the different cast members to each other, friends, co-workers, enemies. Dwight has many enemies. Angela has many enemies, which is why they're so perfect together. But, I do think, the main relationship was always Jim and Pam. And I think that's the part of us that always watches that enjoys romantic comedies. That's what we watched The Office for when we weren't watching it for the comedy. Or, it helps give it a human element. So what were some of your favorite Jim and Pam moments, considering it started off, Jim very much loved Pam, and I think she felt a certain way for him, but she was dedicated to Roy. And then when he confessed his feelings, she didn't reciprocate, so he moved away. but ends up coming back, and then they end up dating, and then over the years so much happens. But would you say, is there a particular sad moment that's your favorite, or a particular like finally moment, or what's your favorite Jim and Pam moment?
Yes, I'll never forget the episode where he decides to move back and he opens the door when she's saying, it never worked out. The timing just wasn't right. And he opens the door and says, "Hey, how about we go to dinner? It's a date." And
Yes,
I
that is such a good
screamed.
moment. Yeah, I think we all screamed a little like yes. I think for me, not giving away too many spoilers. Again, the show's been over for a while, but the whole Niagara Falls, Jim and Pam, like the snipping of the tie,
Oh, yeah.
when her veil, all that, or just when you think that like it's going to be partially ruined because coworkers have taken over, but then you see the Maid in the Mist moments and the music and everything. It's just they really did a good job with that
Yes.
show in terms of developing that relationship. And
It has so much heart. You mentioning clipping the tie reminds me of one of the more emotional moments that I had with Jim and Pam, which is when they're in the hospital after Cece is born and they're trying to manage postpartum life and what it's like to try to feed your child and
I
live your
remember.
life with this thing you're so responsible for, you're so in love with, but you really feel like you are moving through the dark with no flashlight. And I cried watching them in the hospital with their new daughter because I could so relate to that.
Yeah, which was great because even, not having a child, there are moments though, there's something for everybody on that show. And I do think that's something, a nerve you've hit where there is something for everybody on that show. Whether you're like a very picky person about the humor you like, or you do like sort of there's that sort of toilet humor, but there's also like a highbrow sense of humor too.
Yes.
It has it all. It has moments that relate to even for you mostly with the, working in an office, that sort of space, able to then kind of look at it, the day-to-day mundane life in a less mundane way, or at least find some comedy in it. But also these moments where following the relationship of somebody and the children they have, and which also, to end on this note, one of my other favorite Jim and Dwight pranks, when Jim has their friend act like he has always been Jim, and they took like pictures of him, Cece, and Pam, and he's literally sitting at the desk, and Dwight's kind of like, "You're not Jim," and he's like, "Dwight, I've always been Jim." And he even says it kind of with that little thing. So there's always moments for everybody, but the funny little moments always creep in and win in the end, I think. And then, like we said earlier, after Steve Carell leaves, since Michael leaves, and Dwight is still there, Pam and Jim are still there, but I feel like some of the other characters start to really shine. Andy really started to pop out. Because Ed Helms' career was really taken off with like the Hangover movies and stuff like that. And I think his development with Aaron, the
His
Sweeney
family,
Todd, yes, family.
and his career, yes, the Sweeney Todd. There's so much more room. Steve Carell looms large in the
He
first
does, and that's,
season, so.
that's both a positive and a negative thing because you're
Yeah.
right, you miss out on some other stuff. He's great and it's wonderful the stuff he does,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't get to see as much with these other characters, and all of a sudden you do get to see a little bit more of them. What were some of your favorite moments from the later stuff? Like, I really enjoyed like the Sweeney Todd when that episode happens with Andy Bernard. Oh, you know who actually is one of my favorite characters from the later seasons, and I don't know how you'll feel about this, but Nellie. I
Oh
loved
my
Nellie.
gosh.
Are you? Oh my gosh, you love her.
Yes.
I love Nellie, and
Yes.
the first one when she was doing the interview because she was Kathy Bates' friend, I was like, I don't know if I really get what this is supposed to be. And then because they went to that sort of like retreat, or not retreat, but like they had to start that because they were starting that like triangle pyramid like
Yes,
phone thing that makes no
yes,
sense.
yes, that was
And
great.
she's in it, and Nellie was just everything from that moment on, and then the rest of the series. She just kind of comes in, and Andy Bernard stays in Florida or disappears. So she ends up just kind of sitting in his seat, and that's how she gets the
Oh
job.
my gosh.
And then he's like, and that's the thing about the Andy character is that I do think he started off with that rage, but then he kind of became this sort of romantic lead in his own right on the show. However, he then could be kind of nasty,
He
and
was
he was
selfish.
and he was
That's
super nasty to Aaron. He was
Yes.
super nasty to Nellie.
Nellie.
And I understand at first being kind of shifty with Nellie because she did just come in and take his job, which isn't exactly her fault. He should have probably been there.
One of the best lines was when Robert California says, Jim, sometimes the flowers arrange themselves. When Jim is trying to say, this isn't how bosses are created. People don't just sit down in a chair and say, I'm the boss now. And Robert California is such the character that he will say, sometimes it is. That's how it happens.
Right? Brilliant stroke on the show. And yeah, Nellie was a fantastic character. Robert California, the things, you're right. You know, he was also one of those too, which is the show itself. You kind of, the characters walk this line of bizarre that you, in a way that you kind of love them or hate them. And Robert California, there are times where I was like, oh, what is he doing? When he made that like list of like the good people and the bad people and they found it.
Winners and losers?
Yes. And so, you know, so, but like Nellie too, you know, these, and that's what's great about the acting on the show is that they did find these nuances to make them kind of, you sometimes hate them, sometimes love them. And I do feel like Andy Bernard in the later seasons, you really disliked him, but then all of a sudden Ed Helms would pull it out and you'd kind of be feeling for him again, like when he did the sort of reality, a cappella reality show that's like American Idol thing.
When he sang that song, like, to Goodbye The Office.
Oh.
I Will Remember You.
Yes,
That
it was beautiful. Yeah, it was really, really good. And, you know, and getting to a little bit to the finale, too, you know, one of my favorite two side characters, Creed, who always kind of pops in. But then he comes in with one of the most emotionally poignant moments of the show is when he's playing, because he was supposed to be a member of the band, which I think he kind of was a member of the band, the Grassroots or something. And he kind of the outro to the show in a way where he's playing, you know, he's playing music, but it's the music on the show is something to mention too. When Andy Bernard is doing the Take a Chance on Me, and it's kind of the phone, or he has the rock. Well, first he has like Rockin' Robin, and then Jim throws it up in the thing, which is what also ultimately makes Andy lose his mind the first time. But then he does to Ask Angela Out. He does the Take a Chance on Me, where he has two people on a phone while he's doing it. So they do have a lot of good musical moments on there, and just. Well, when they're trying to figure out the jingle, which is also one of my favorite episodes, is when Dunder Mifflin is doing an ad for the company, and everybody gets to do a little part, but it's literally like a 3-second clip at the end of a main commercial that's already been shot, and Michael's thinking they're going to get to develop this whole thing.
And it's good.
Right? It ends up being wonderful. It's one of my favorite little moments on the show when you see the full commercial, but during it when they're like, paper is good, Dunder Mifflin. But he's
paper person, paper people.
Paper person. Yes, yes. And he ends up, he's like, I thought there was going to be more R&B. Because Daryl is black, and he's kind of like, I thought this was going to be more of a rap thing. And Daryl's like, what's rap? I don't even know what that is. What is that? And it's just, again, one of those moments. But it is one of my favorite endings to an episode / ensemble moments / because the whole thing is full of stereotypes of the people in the commercial as well as stereotypes for those kinds of commercials where it's like passing the baton until it becomes into a plane that floats into a garbage, and the garbage, you know, you pull out and it's Dwight holding a piece of paper saying, you gave up a son, and it's me, to Phyllis, who's like his same age, but Michael always acts like she's like 30 years older than him. So good times. It's hard to do, and it is hard to do a sort of retro review like this on The Office without getting distracted into so many of these good, solid moments, because it's not like you said, it did get better and better each season, so it's hard to like be like, well, the show was really strong during these seasons and kind of dipped down here. I mean, it was always brilliant. Even when it wasn't maybe at its strongest, it still was always a 9 out of 10, you know, in my opinion. It's just one of those shows I definitely are gonna miss. And I'll probably be doing a, you know, marathon again soon of them. You can't resist it. You know, the later seasons, the beginning seasons, they all have just fantastic moments, and each one for their own set of reasons, you know. Just talking a little bit about yourself, Alicia. I was curious, you know, I know you're really big into the salt spa situation. You know, what is that about exactly?
Okay, so dry salt inhalation therapy is an old therapy for the 1800s where people would go into the salt mines after seeing that salt miners had above average health and no respiratory problems. So people have created these halo generators which grind salt into microscopic particles. You sit in a room, you breathe it in, you relax for 45 minutes, and it helps with stress, asthma, allergies, COPD, cystic
Oh, wow.
fibrosis, sinusitis,
That does a lot.
bronchitis, smoker's cough, psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis. It can boost your immune system. It can increase your lung capacity.
Where do you find places like this?
Not around here, and
Not
that's
as much as
why
you should.
yes. So the nearest one to me is in Centerville, about 45 minutes away.
Always the stuff that is best of us for us is out of reach.
You
But
know what, though? There are a lot in Cleveland. There are a lot in Columbus, and it's
do they have a specific name? I mean, are they just called salt spas or?
if you're looking for a salt room, you would search for salt room, salt spa, halo therapy, or dry salt therapy.
And for some other things in pop culture, what are some of your all-time favorite books or poetry or?
Mm. Mm.
Sorry, I put you on the spot, but this is
No,
what I like to put you on the spot
okay.
with.
So, books, I think of Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. I think that's timeless. To not go into it too much. And then I was just talking with my husband about Gertrude Stein and her, I think it was a book of poems, Tender Buttons, and her exploration of this unique form of poetry, which is more of the style of writing where I think it stems from writing without picking your pen up off the paper. So it's a stream
So in a
of
way, a stream of
consciousness.
conscious. Okay.
Yeah, and I loved writing like that in college and seeing where it took me. And it can be great for if you want your own therapy session.
And what is some music that you really dig and are into? Like
Hmm.
some of your all-time favorite music, and then some of the new random music that you've been enjoying lately.
Okay, well, I love going back and listening to Tom Petty. Um, a lot of the stuff that you wouldn't hear on the radio is, in my opinion, some of his best stuff. I can't stop listening to Kesha,
Oh yeah, I love.
Rainbow.
Yes, I thought every song on that album was fantastic.
Oh my gosh,
I couldn't wait to share that with you. Like, I
and I'm
mean,
so glad you did.
Danielle showed it to me, and it was like it's so silly, but it made our relationship a little bit more magic. And I'm like, I have to share that with everybody that I can, but you were somebody very specific where I was listening to those lyrics. I'm like, this magic could kind of continue on where Alicia will appreciate this kind of songs, like the song Rainbow, but then you have Boots, and you just keep going on and on. They're so good. Yes, I'm with you on this, 100% Kesha. Sorry. Okay, what are some of your all-time favorite movies?
I think of Adaptation.
Oh, that was a good one. You showed me that one too.
I
Yeah.
think I watched that a lot that year that I was showing it to you and everyone I knew.
It was really clever.
I think of Charlie Kaufman and his writing as if I was a screenwriter, that's the kind of screenwriter I would want to be.
Yeah.
Human nature has its flaws for sure, but I loved it. Watch it. Patricia Arquette and Tim Robbins. I can't believe so many people haven't watched this movie.
Human Nature.
Human
Mhm.
Nature.
What is something right now for the world you think the world needs or would make the world a little bit better right now? Like for me, start treating animals better. I feel like the creatures of this earth are super important, and I think they have souls, and I think they want to feel love and be full on food and life and energy just as much as any human. I subscribe to this sort of online newsletter, I guess, called Lady Freethinker, and it'll send you like petitions to sign about like animal cruelty, and there's just way too much animal cruelty out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know like what's going on in your lives, but please start treating animals better. Like, I'm sorry if you don't have any power in your own life. A lot of people don't. Don't try and get that power from some helpless creature. I'm sorry, that's just mine. What is something you would like to see a little bit more in the world right
I can see it being
now?
in the same vein because I was looking at the different branches of yoga, which isn't just the physical movement. There are names for all of them, but the one I was looking at was non-harm, which can include being kinder to animals. Some people go as far as a lot of yogis are vegetarians and won't eat meat. But this was more in relationships and in conversations. And for me, it was more about trying to focus on how I can not be reactive and just listen more to people. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest things we can do right now is not react and just take a beat and listen with kindness and patience. I think of Sarah Silverman, who had some really horrible, rude things said to her by this one person on Twitter. And she looked into his profile and looked at what was wrong with him, and she said, I know you're in pain. I see that from your profile. I have back problems too. What can I do to help you with this? And she got this, like, I don't know if it was a GoFundMe page or something. She got him some help with his pain problems and talked with him about some other things that were happening in his life, and he said thank you for
Somebody that
being
started
that
such
way
a volatile way to then become.
like a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think what you just said, there's something I want to emphasize that I think you said in there that I think is so true is, as especially in, I guess, American society, but most Western societies, like I think we're conditioned to, if somebody says something, we have to respond right away. We have to do this. And like you said, taking a beat and then responding, I think could solve a lot of junk in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Not everything, but it's a start. Well, thank you so much, Alicia. I had the best time talking about The Office with you. I don't know so much I call it a retro review because I feel like we talked a little bit about everything because we love the show so much.
Love
and
it.
There's so much good in there. So if you haven't seen the show yet, I'm sorry about any spoilers we gave, but they're just names to you, so they're probably already drifted out and you watch the show.
Anyway.
And those of you that have already seen the show, and I know there's a lot of you, it's a way to just refresh your memory on some of the fun, great moments. So thank you for watching 411 Pop Culture. And this is real people talking about really everything. We'll see you soon.